Hello, everyone! Welcome to another edition of my visual podcast, Art for Uncultured Swines. Today, we have three special guests with us so we can talk about contemporary architecture. I have with me, all the way from Korea, Soo-Min Lee.
Thank you very much for inviting us, Rachel.
Mexican fellow, Salvador Sterling.
Hey, well, thank you very much for inviting me.
And from the United States, our beloved Jalen Snecker.
Thank you, I'm so excited to be here.
Welcome, guys. So, Salvador, would you like to give us a little introduction to what contemporary architecture is?
Contemporary architecture, it's amazing. It's something we have to look deeper because there is no dominant style. Dozens of different styles and approaches have been out there in the world during these last years. Well, but they have something in common. The use of advanced technology and modern building materials, such as steel structure, which allows to construct buildings that are taller, lighter, and stronger, which is amazing. Also, we have new techniques like computers, which help architects to have 3D views from their designs and make them have more accurate designs and make them faster, of course, which earns a lot of money at the moment of constructions and planning. Well, contemporary architecture is designed to be noticed all around the world and to astonish people, just as we can see in those beautiful museums, concert halls, skycorps, stadiums, government buildings, airports, and bridges. It's just beautiful how time flies, and we see how architecture makes a beautiful evolution there.
Thank you, Salvador. That was really enlightening. I hope our audience at home are now intrigued in the contemporary architecture. I sure know I am. But anyways, let's continue with our next guest, Jay. I know you wanted to talk about a special architect of your country. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about Frank Lloyd Wright. Frank Lloyd Wright was born on June 8th, 1867 in Richland Center, Wisconsin. During his life, he actually studied at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and later in his life, he was a member of the Prairie School movement of architecture. During this time as an architect, though, he designed many different types of buildings. He designed a bank, he designed hotel resorts, churches, a beer garden, and even designed an art museum. He was actually called one of the greatest architects of the 20th century. But sadly, when he was 91, he died from surgical complications on April 9th, 1959 in Phoenix, Arizona. But he did design many fascinating buildings. One of them actually was called the Johnson Wax Headquarters. It was built in 1936, and it was designed during the streamline art modern style, which was very popular in the 1930s. He used his unique perspective and many different features. This building actually required over 200 different curved Cherokee red bricks to create the sweeping curve that appeared inside and outside the building. The inside of the building contained columns that were 9 inches thick, and at the top of these actually expanded to like these circular shapes that were kind of like lily pads. The floor was concrete and it embraced the reddish hue that the bricks had inside and outside of the building. This building was actually 14 stories high, and the furniture that was inside was actually designed by Steelcase specifically for this building, mirroring the designs of the building. So that was one of his buildings, but another one that's more famous, and is actually his most famous, could be said, building was built in 1935 in Pennsylvania, and it was called the Falling Water House. This house was put in a low valley overlooking a stream, and it was surrounded by the Bear River. This house actually contained these large terraces, and some of them actually stuck out over top of the waterfall that was underneath the house. The house contained many unique features. It had tall glass windows, it had doors that were glass, and they were all separated from these narrow steel support beams, which wrapped around the living room. The house contained even floor-to-ceiling windows. It was very unique, and inside the house, there was this huge wall that was actually just glass, so the people inside could feel more part of nature, and they could actually see the beautiful scenery around them because it was based in this forest. once you walked in, there was these unique features in the rooms. Once you directly walked in, there was this thing called the music corner. And then there was also a thing called this staircase of water, which was suspended by contraction cables from the first slab of the house. And these stairs led down to a small platform by the river. So this house was very unique. It was very well known, and it's actually his most popular architecture building that he made.
Wow, talk about environmental architecture. Well, thank you, Jalen, for casting light on some of the architecture that can be found in the USA. If this is what USA has for us, then I'm so excited for what Korea has next.
Well, unfortunately, so he's from Japan, and his name is Toyo Ito, who was born in 1941. And Toyo Ito is a renowned Japanese architect who always emphasized embracing nature into the architecture. He graduated the University of Tokyo, and he accumulated experience under Kikutake Kiyonori, who was a symbol of Metropolis School. After years, he set up his own architect studio, Urban Robot, in Tokyo. He won a number of prizes and gained international fame for exquisite outcomes. First of all, I'd like to introduce you his artwork called A Stunning Tower of the Winds in Yokohama. It was built in 1986, and the tower has neon light rings which reflect the sound of the city around it. It shows different levels of light rings depending on the outer sound. At night, the lights and reflective surfaces dance to the music of the city, and the computer controls reacting to both man-made and natural forces. It was an innovative idea from his time, connecting the architect with musical sound. Second, he has another architecture of his, and it's called White U of 1976. White U was designed for Toyo Ito's older sister and her family, who had just lost her husband to cancer. It locates in Tokyo. The bent linear space of the house has a long corridor ended on every family member's room. All surfaces has a multi-use space, including the carpet were white, which reinforced the powerful light effects. And the imaginary scenery of the house is very impressive. The curved corridors make the light be distorted, enhancing an enigmatic atmosphere. And everything's closed from the outside. It has its garden at the core that you can see it anywhere you are. And it may enhance the nature-friendly aspect of the house. However, as Ito mentioned, I have to admit that this circumstance is not the best environment to raise children.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Suming, about the confusion there. I was just so excited to hear about the architecture in Asia. But thank you for your special contribution. It was very interesting and mind-blowing. Well, you guys have mentioned great architects, and I can tell you're really passionate about the topic on contemporary architecture. But I made my homework too. Do you guys know about Norman Foster?
Amazing.
Do you know about him?
Not much, will you tell me?
Wembley Stadium. I love football and I know about that.
Yes, Salvador, you're right. Norman Foster created the Wembley Stadium, the home of football, located on London, England, and home to the England football team, done in 2007. But that's just not it. Norman Foster is one of the most internationally recognized contemporary architects. He was born on June 1st, 1935 in Manchester. He studied architecture at the University of Manchester and later obtained a scholarship to continue his studies at Yale University. Then he went back to England. He started working with the architect Richard Buckminster, and it was 1965 when they decided to find, along with both their wives, the studio of architects Team 4. But 3 years later, that study was disbanded, and Norman founded Foster Associates Study with his wife, Wendy. Foster's initial projects are characterized by a high-tech style and also influenced by the criteria of his partner, Roger. Later, the lines of their buildings softened, and that technical nature, taken to an extreme, disappears. What do you think about that?
That's crazy.
It's just progress, right?
It's very innovative.
He has also received several important architectural awards, such as the Gold Medal of American Institute of Architecture and, in 1999, the prestigious Pritzker Prize. Does any of your architects have Pritzker Prizes?
Of
Yes,
course.
sure.
Yeah.
No, but In 1991...
Ooh.
No, stop.
Ooh.
Okay, so in 1991, Frank Wright did get recognized as the greatest American architect of all time by the American Institute of Architects. So mine has that.
Well,
But Pritzker, it's Pritzker, man, and you don't have a Pritzker.
Pritzker is Pritzker.
guys, wait. We don't want to have a riot in the studio. But okay, I'm going to keep showing off my architect. I want to talk to you guys today about Willis Faber and Thomas headquarters because I think it's an underrated building, yet it's so interesting. It's Foster's first green building that came along before such works were in any sort of trend. You know, guys, I think Norman Foster was very ahead of his time, since the Willis Faber and Thomas headquarters building is a dramatic example of environmentally informed, respectful design. While Google and other Silicon Valley giants now advocate for the corporate culture that mixes work and play, Foster was promoting office conviviality years before it was fashionable. In addition to amenities that include a pool, roof cafeteria, and a roof lawn, the building also has centrally located escalators made for a design that was open and community-oriented. Eager to change the principles of modernism, Foster created a building that was shaped by its surroundings. The building is 3 stories tall, and that fulfills its spatial requirements with a blood-like shape that adheres to the surrounding medieval street plan. The building's all-glass facade, developed with Pillington, hangs almost effortlessly from a clamping strip at the roof level. The panels themselves are connected by corner patch fittings and are jointed to each other with silicone. The highly efficient coated glass remains nearly black during the day and is translucent at night. These sort of glass windows are used nowadays, so think about it. Once again, I think Foster was just ahead of his time. Willis Faber and Thomas headquarters was awarded Great First Listed status in 1991 for its ingenuity. It was the newest building ever to be given this honor and has since been immune to future changes. Norman Foster also has other modern works like Clyde Auditorium in Glasgow, Scotland, or as most people know it, the Sec Armadillo. It is one of the 3 most important venues on the Scottish event campus. Many comparisons have been made with the Sydney Opera House, although this was not the architect's inspiration for design.
You know, Itzel, I find interesting that you talk about Norman Foster. He won the Pritzker Award in 1999. You know who won it in 1998? Yes. Renzo Piano, a better architect. Things happen for a reason, and if he won it before, he's better. Well, he was born in Genoa in 1937, part of a family of constructors, so he grew up with these ideas of innovative architecture. So it's not casualty that we find incredible designs in what he does. Well, one of the most important designs is Nemo, constructed between 1994 and 1997, located in a small stretch of land in Amsterdam. Surrounded by water, the building has a ship-like form and pre-oxidized copper clad facades referencing the surrounding port. The construction was made for NIT, that is the National Institute of Science of the Netherlands, and it is a museum that is specially designed for kids, for their creation, to learn about science. There's an exposition about DNA, chain reaction, water cycles, and animals' brains. So it's amazing, and it's the 8th museum more visited in the Netherlands. Another thing I want to talk about him is the Kansai International Airport. This construction made him win the Pritzker Award, that one that he won before Norman Foster. It was built between 1988 and 1994. Imagine, this was an airport built in an artificial island in Japan. Does one of your architects have everything of that before? No, because just Renzo Piano can do it. An island that has an airport in Japan, in Osaka. That's amazing. Of course, 1.7 kilometers, 42 boarding bridges, and a capacity for 100,000 passengers a day. It's an amazing airport, the 3rd airport with more activity in Japan. A notable feature and one of the primary importance in the organization of the airport is the unobstructed visibility of the planes themselves, thanks to the uninterrupted lines of the vision from the open departure level main terminal building. The departure level is covered by a large clear span undulating route of a symmetrical form. It is perhaps the shape that is the project's main innovation. and it has 82,000 stainless steel panels in the rooftops, which are identical thanks to all the mathematical designs, which are perfect. That was what I was saying in the introduction when I talked about all this computer. Well, this is where we can see it has been implemented.
Okay, Renzo fanatic, we see you. But yeah, I think everything you talked about is really interesting. How Renzo see the world. It's another way of thinking, and I just think.
Yeah, it's amazing, and he's just out there since 1977 when he designed the George Pompidou Center, which is one of the attractions of France, of course.
Well, kudos to Renzo then.
Renzo Piano, the best architect in the world.
Salvador, you're crazy. Well, thank you everyone for being here. I loved having each one of you in this show, and I hope to see you soon so we can discuss more about art. Thank you, Jalen, for being here. Thank you, Sumin, and thank you, Salvador.
It was a pleasure. Thanks to you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, that's all for today's podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and as always, I hope you learned something today here in Art for Uncultured Swines.